On Golden event this year, Golden Makes a Watercolor. I'm Katie, our community specialist. I spend a lot of my time in social media, generating our posts, as well as checking in on your comments and questions.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a formulator, so I work on developing new products.
We've got a real nice lineup of things to talk to you about today. Our Core Watercolors. This is actually the 10th anniversary of Core Watercolors launching, so we're super excited to be here today to chat with you about some common questions that we get. We have a resource page linked in the chat for you with some helpful links for other articles and videos about Core. And we have Scott, one of our materials and application specialists, in the chat answering any questions that you might have. So feel free to put any questions in the chat throughout our event today. We're going to go over the palette range and a little bit of a history of Core today. We'll talk to you about what makes Core a modern watercolor. We'll talk about the difference between Aquazol and gum arabic as binders in watercolor paints, the compatibility of Core with other brands, and we'll talk a little bit about pricing as well. So starting off with the history of Core, we launched Core in 2014 with 83 colors.
Yeah, and most of those single pigments, so that's actually a very big range that we started with.
Yeah, absolutely. We've also added some colors exclusively in half pans.
Right, yeah, so we had the interference and iridescent half pan set, and now some of those colors are in our new launch.
Yes, that's super exciting. We have 20 new colors that just launched, so that brings us up to 96 colors in our 11 milliliter tube format. Some of those colors that you mentioned, the interference colors that were previously just in the reflector half pan set are now available in tubes as well. We can take a look at the screen here and we'll see those new colors. So a really nice variety there.
Yeah, you can also see on there we've got ultramarine pink dark. So unfortunately we had to discontinue the ultramarine pink, and all our discontinuations are because suppliers don't make the pigment anymore. So it's never something we want to do. But yeah, so you can see on the screen all those new colors, including the interference violet green shift, green orange shift, and green blue shift. So I think we have a video of those.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. Painting them out, it's really incredible to see the color shift and how vibrant they are.
Yeah, the color shift are like a step up from the regular interference because, well, they're very potent for one, but also they reflect a different color at a different angle rather than canceling out. So yeah, you can see definitely on the left side of the, well, it's gone now. But, yeah. So
yeah,
very beautiful video.
We're super excited about all of those new colors. Should we paint some out and take a look at some of those new colors?
Yep, so let's go over to the overhead camera.
We've got the ultramarine pink dark that Anna mentioned that we'll take a look at, as well as cadmium purple, isoindolinone yellow, and
brown umber. Yeah, so definitely the cadmium purple is very interesting. Katie's going to paint that out. I'm not aware of anybody else making that color, so it's definitely a unique pigment because it's nice and opaque, but you also get that purple tone, so that's pretty rare. Like this ultramarine pink dark is very transparent. So I'm painting that over some wet, and you can see how nice and lively that behaves as well.
I'll also go in here with that isoindolinone yellow. Take a look, that's really nice and vibrant.
Yeah. So yeah, if I do some little drops in there, you can see how nicely that behaves over the wet. And I'll do some over dry as well. So yeah, even though it's wet, you can already see that that's going to granulate and be really nice.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about granulation in just a bit here as well.
Yeah, let's see this brown umber before we move on.
We can do a little wet section there as well. Great.
Yeah. And we do have a dry example that we,
Yep. Put that in here as well.
Just so you can see kind of how these will dry. So these are the same colors there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so one of the things that we hear a lot about core is how vibrant and potent it is. And so can you talk a little bit about that, Anna?
Yeah, so this one is our Pyrrole Orange, and we painted it out by weight against two competitors. So this is 25 to 1. So in the middle, we've got the core, and on either side are competitors. So you can see, especially if you just look like in the middle, covering up where it's pulled up, that the core is very potent and very bright. You can see it even more if we go even more dilute. So that was 25 to 1, and this is 50 to 1. So now you can really see just how a little bit of core goes a very long way.
Absolutely. That's so vibrant. So Anna, what is it like when you're developing the new colors, and how do you choose them?
Yeah, so it's a definite collaboration with all the departments. So we look at what colors are kind of missing from our range, how can we offer the full spectrum of colors to the artist, and also what pigments do we already make for like the Golden line or Williamsburg oil paints that might be really nice in watercolor. So so first we start with, bringing in high quality pigments. We might bring in new pigments. So the Disazo Scarlet, PR242, and the Paraline Violet, PV29 are both new pigments that we haven't used at Golden before, but we heard artists asking for them.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure to include those in the line.
Great.
And another thing we do is we do stability testing on everything. So what that means is we make a lab trial, and then we put that in our oven for 4 weeks at 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And that allows us to see if there's going to be a stability problem like separation or chunks are getting really thick in the future. So we've got no expiration date on the paint, and we want to make sure it's going to be good forever.
That's great. That's, I'm sure, great for artists to hear as well. We always get questions about our testing, and one of those things that we do get questions about quite a bit is light fastness. So what kind of light fastness testing do you do?
Yeah, so we tested all these new colors with our xenon arc chamber. So that means we're simulating about 100 years of gallery lit conditions. So what will you expect to see as far as color fade over time? So we've got some examples here if we want to switch back to the overhead camera. So I hope I didn't blind you there by showing you this Pyrrole Orange again. So what we've done is a range of dilutions so that we can make sure the pigments is still going to be light fast all the way down into a dilution. So this one we've done 10 to 1 all the way to 200 to 1, and on this side we're diluting with water, and then on this side we're mixing it with titanium white core. So if you wanted to use your core as a gouache, this is a great way to opacify whatever color. And you can see there's little cutouts here. These cutouts are what went in the xenon machine, and then the rest is just the unexposed control. So you can see basically no difference between the part that was exposed to about 100 years of aging and the rest of the paint. So that's one of the reasons we have really good confidence, and we would list this light fastness 1 or excellent.
That's incredible to see such little change in these colors after that testing.
Yeah, no, it is incredible. So another one is this cadmium purple, which you can see this nice granulation as well with these dilutions. And again, we went from 10 to 1 all the way to 200 to 1. And also you can see this amazing tone shift when you mix it with the white, so it shows you just how versatile it is. And another granulator, we've got this brown umber here that we were just painting out a minute before. And again, you can see basically no change as you dilute it and as it goes in through the xenon. But this one's really exciting. You basically can get like a raw umber just by adding a little bit of white. So yeah, just very interesting color.
This is one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, yeah. So this one with the iridescence and interference, we can't measure the difference on our spectrophotometer, but we judge it by eye because we still want to, make sure it's fairly light fast, right? But you can see just when you paint out that iridescent copper thickly, how shiny and nice that is. So that's
that's
really
lovely.
Cool. And then this phthalo blue red shade is a good example of where we might disagree with ASTM, which develops the standard testing method. So they list phthalo blue as light fastness 2, but in our test, we found it to be very good because you can see there's very little color shift, even as you get really dilute. And so since our delta E was so small in our measurement, we're calling that golden excellent, which is the equivalent of light fastness 1.
Wow, that's great. That's another beautiful color.
Yeah. And then this is an interesting example. This is Payne's Gray Violet. So this is a blend of 3 pigments, and we wanted to make sure that our blend was going to be light fast. So we actually have done 3 different pigment blends, and we decided we'll just pick the one that has the best light fastness. You probably can't see any difference between these 3 on here because they were all very strong. And I believe we did go with this 3rd one here. And this is the same thing, but diluted with the white instead of just water.
Great. Those are really interesting. Thanks for bringing those today.
Yeah, happy to share that with artists. I know they're interested in that. And so yeah, all our new colors are light fastness 1 are excellent. So we're very proud of that.
That's great. So another thing that we talk about a lot is core as a modern watercolor. And what would you say the qualities of core that make it a modern watercolor?
Yeah, so first of all, we bring to the table our golden experience and technology. So we are using milling to really develop the tint of the pigments to make that amount of pigment go a really long way. We're using wetting agents to really bring out the chroma and the brightness.
Okay.
And one of the really cool things is, actually, let's show that milling picture there. So here's an example of what the milling does. On the left, you have the undermilled example. This is the Paraline Crimson, milled 1 time. And then on the right, the final formula, we decided to mill it 7 times. And you can see, with the same amount of pigment, just how much tint strength you can get from that process.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never would have thought how much of a difference the milling would make for that.
Yeah, same pigment load. So another cool thing you can do with core is paint on a variety of substrates. So Aquazol, the binder in core, is also used in conservation, and they can put that on paintings, objects, and trust that it's fully removable. But yeah, you think about that, you can paint it on anything, basically.
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
We've got another image, which is an example of painting on Duralar, or a non-absorbent substrate. So this is like a matte, transparent sheet that you can paint on. So with a standard gum Arabic competitor paint, you can't even wet out that substrate. But the core, you can just paint it just like a normal watercolor. And so that top example is over dry. And then on the bottom, if you wet out the substrate first, you can get that gum Arabic to behave a little more normally, but it's just not very user-friendly.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. And so another characteristic of core that we talk about a lot too is how lively it is and the beautiful blooms. We saw some of those when we were painting them out. I think we have a clip of that here as well, but anything else to note there with how lively core is?
Yeah, so that definitely is another reason we would call it modern. You don't really see that from other brands. And that's just something that can give you a nice dynamic painterly effect. And if you're not into that, you can control that in a variety of ways. One of those being, if we go to the overhead cam, yeah, pretty again. Yeah. This is our synthetic oxgall medium. So this is a wetting agent blend. It's vegan, it's not oxgall, it's just called synthetic oxgall to let artists know what it should be used for if they're familiar with oxgall. So that you can add into your paints, and it will make paints that are less lively more lively. Or you could add it to your substrate in a wash with water, and that will make everything suck right into the substrate more, and then it won't be as lively. So you can deaden it or make it more lively with that medium. So it's very versatile.
Great. Very cool.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about Aquazol a few times and kind of mentioned it, but what is Aquazol?
Yeah, so Aquazol is a synthetic binder, whereas gum Arabic is a natural binder that comes from tree sap. So let's go to the overhead again. And so we've got bottles of each of those here. So the gum arabic from tree sap, you can see it's got all those tannins in, almost like a, like what gives tea its color, for instance. So it's got this dark color just naturally, whereas Aquazol, being a synthetic binder, it's much clearer. You got a little yellowish tinge, but mostly very clear. So that's very exciting. And so that gives us a good starting point. But obviously, there's a lot more to it than just that. So
yeah.
Aquazol, being synthetic, it's also chemically stable. So it's not going to embrittle over time like gum arabic does. It stays exactly the same. It's going to be flexible. It's going to be permanently resoluble. So that's why it works great as a watercolor.
Yeah, and I think we have an example of that here too with the kind of adhering that you mentioned.
Right. So yeah, on this graphic, you can see I've painted out 2-to-1, 2 parts paint, 1 part water. Core versus 2 competitors that use gum arabic, and in those thickest areas, we saw cracking very quickly, like overnight. We saw cracking. So that shows you can paint core a little more thickly. So that's another way you can use it in a modern way. And
absolutely.
I've got what I think is an exciting example here. So trying to prove, I guess, to myself and to everybody that Aquazol is more flexible. I made some trials, so we've controlled for the pigment load. So all these trials have the same pigment load, but we've done Aquazol versus gum arabic. So this first trial that you can actually see right now is the core, the standard Perylene Violet, mixed 2-to-1. And then this one that's a little bit covered up is with Aquazol and pigment only, so no other ingredients. And then what's happened here is the gum arabic ones curled up the paper. So you can imagine if that was flat, it would have cracked just like that other example that we showed. And I haven't uncurled this because I want you guys to hear the sound as I uncurl it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get some crinkle there. So, yeah, you can see, I mean, in real life you can see, I don't know if it's showing up on the camera at all, we've got some micro cracking in the thickest areas of this gum arabic paint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if I bend it more, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah. So this C trial is gum arabic at the same pigment load as those Aquazol ones. And the D one is adding some honey because we know that some manufacturers add that for flexibility. But the honey one has also cracked. It's just not cracked as much as the regular one. So another thing you probably can't see through the camera is the chroma versus the haze. So the gum arabic one is very hazy, which means to me that there's too high a pigment load in that paint compared to what we can fit in the Aquazol.
Great.
Yeah, and one more. So we've got some wet paint here. These are some lab trials in our little lab jars. So this is that same paint, not diluted at all. So this is the Aquazol only one. So if I give that a little bit of a stir, you can see how thick or thin that is. And then the one with gum arabic was 10 times as thick, I want to say. So let's see what that one feels like. So I give that a stir. It's not, yeah, it's giving me a lot of resistance. I'm not able to shear it down at all. So
yeah, you can definitely see that's a lot thicker.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for those examples. Another question that we get every now and then too is if Aquazol is synthetic, how is it different from acrylic?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of different types of synthetic binders. Acrylic is a specific one that's really good for durability and UV resistance and chemical resistance. So if you paint it with acrylics and then you put a little bit of water on it sometime in the future, it's not going to resolubilize.
Okay.
Whereas the Aquazol binder, it's going to stay resoluble forever. So that's one of the reasons it's great for watercolor.
Great, thanks. And another thing to note about Aquazol too is that it's used in some food packaging adhesive, so it is a safe material and there's no special handling instructions for using the paints with Aquazol, so that's always great to know too.
Synthetic doesn't mean dangerous. This is a very safe one that's widely used. Yeah.
Great. So a question that we get a lot too is, since Core has a different binder than some traditional other watercolors with gum arabic, can you still use them in combination?
Yes, absolutely. We designed Core to be compatible with other brands, so yes.
That's great. We talked a little bit about granulation earlier and swatched out some granulating colors, but what is granulation and do we have a lot of those colors?
Yeah, about half of our range is granulating. And so what granulation is when the pigment is heavy. So something like an earth color like ultramarine blue or burnt sienna, or like some of our new ones would be the cadmium purple or the brown umber. Those pigments are much heavier than the staining pigments like phthalo blue or quin magenta. So when you have a heavy pigment, that's going to basically sink to the bottom of your puddle of water.
Sure.
So you will see it pool up and group together, clump together, and artists really love the granulating effect. So if we want to pull back our paint out from earlier, show that again. So you can see here on this cad purple how much granulation you get, as well as the brown umber. That's really a really cool granulation because it's got like a color shift where it's granulated, and the ultramarine pink dark. So that kind of gritty look that watercolor artists love, that is granulation. And you can see also here on the isoindolinone yellow that's more staining, it doesn't really have that granulation. So you just get like a smooth transition of colors going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we have some different surfaces here as well. Do we want to test them out on there?
Yeah, so let's try out some of our new colors on these different watercolor grounds so we can show the liveliness and the granulation and some of the effects we're getting with them.
All right, got these prepped for you.
Yeah, so I've drawn a little pencil box on these so we can also demonstrate how it stays within those lines. So if I just paint right inside the lines here.
Great.
And you can see how it's different over the different grounds. So the watercolor ground being more absorbent, it's having a different effect than this light dimensional ground where it's kind of sitting on top.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the cold press ground, this is really great if you want to simulate cold press paper. So all three of these grounds are on canvas, so you can get a really papery effect if you prefer the feeling of painting on paper, especially the light dimensional ground. You really feel, I forgot that was wet. You really feel that papery, nice feeling even though you're working on canvas. So that can be great if you're being more archival. So yeah, you can see on this watercolor ground that's so absorbent, it's not spreading. The water is staying put right where it is versus like spreading as in this light dimensional ground. And same thing on the cold press ground, it's spreading a little more.
Yeah, you can definitely get more of that blooming effect on there as well. We tried a few other colors on here too.
Yeah.
Let's add this isoindolinone yellow on the bottom here.
I might want to dilute that one a little more. That's so potent, the cad purple.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful color.
Yeah, maybe I'll put a little more water on here. Yeah, so you can see how this behaves on the different grounds. Got a little more now.
Put some out for you here too.
Yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, that's nice on the cold press ground. So yeah, it's also like accentuating the texture of the fibers in that cold press ground really nicely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting to see how many different effects you can get on different surfaces as well.
Yeah, so if you aren't really interested in the lively effects, I would say the watercolor ground, you can see it's really staying put exactly where we put that color down, as opposed to if you want some more spreadable effects. Definitely the more water you use, the more spreading you get. So you can see where we painted over dry, it's really staying put, and where we painted over wet, we're getting some different degrees of migration. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so the other great thing about granulation, light fastness, all of these things that we've mentioned today is that they're really easy to find on our label. So you can find a lot of this information even while you're in the store shopping for colors. We'll put up an image here of our label, which we did recently redesign the core label in addition or with the launch of the new colors. So we did add the little G to indicate the granulating colors to the new label. So any new colors you get, you'll be seeing that there. And if you are looking for that information and you have a previous label, you can always find that on our website along with pigment information, light fastness, but there is a ton of great information right on the label as well. So we do try to make that really easy for artists when they're in the store.
Yeah, that G is very straightforward. Yeah.
Nice and easy to find.
Another way you can think about it is by the name of the color. So for example, something like isoindolinone or disazo or benzimidazolone, those kind of organic chemistry sounding names, those are going to tend to be staining and not granulating, whereas your more earth natural pigments are going to be more granulating.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right, so next up we have some info for you about pricing. We can put a little diagram up on the screen here. And so this is a price comparison of core with some competitors with the price per milliliter on here for you. That's really the best way to compare since we do offer an 11 milliliter tube. Some competitors offer 14 or 15. So that's the best way to find that out. And you'll see that core is very competitive with the other professional brands. We are super excited to tell you that since we launched in 2014, we've not increased the price of our tubes at all. So
yeah, that's very exciting. We hope that will entice people to try it.
Yeah, and you know, with core being a complete invention in 2014, it did come with some higher costs, more testing, developing something completely new. But we're really excited that it's out there, and we hope that if you haven't tried it yet, you'll give it a try. And if you are a core user, we hope that you're as excited about the new colors as we are.
Yeah.
So that's all that we have for you today. We hope we answered everything you might have wanted to know about core. The new colors are now shipping, so definitely check in with your local retailers on availability of those. And if you have any questions after our event today, you can always reach out to our materials and application specialists at help@goldenpaints.com. Thanks so much for joining us.